Hello, everyone. Good morning. Excited to be here. The funny thing is, it's very good to have your talk at the beginning of a conference, so you can enjoy the rest of the conference. Right? I should thank for organizers for giving me the talk right after the keynote. Can you guys hear me? Yep. All good. All right. So this is my second LambdaConf. I talked about Ballerina programming language last year. Kind of sad to hear that this is the last. I'm still processing that feeling. Maybe right after the talk, I'll process a little bit more. So this time, I'll be talking about Open Choreo, which is an internal developer platform. It's kind of two different tracks, but these are the two projects that I'm working on these days, right?
All right. So what is an internal developer platform? Anybody familiar with the term? It's a relatively new term. Yeah. So the idea is, it is a platform developed by platform engineers for developers. So it's like, it has many phases. You can say it's like a CI/CD platform. You can think of it like a side of your company, right? So, and who are the primary consumers? The developers, as the title says. Like, developers use it. It would help developers to make their lives easier, to do what they do the best, write code, design, and then the platform should take care of taking your code to production in various stages, right? So let's dig deeper in next slide. So these platforms are quite complicated. So we'll get to this image a little bit later as well. It takes a few seconds to go through this, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. My point is, these platforms can be quite complicated depending on how far you want to go, right? So I'll talk about it as we go along. But if you look at these platforms in a very high level, they are very simple. As you can see in the image, there are two primary consumers, I would say: platform engineers and developers. So platform engineers are the people who basically build or configure or maintain these systems. And developers are the primary consumers, right? So they consume this platform using various, it could be committing code. It could be logging into these portals. Or it could be using the CLI, right? So those are the ways that you can interact. Like when you push your code, typically your CI/CD platform takes care of the code, right? And then it pushes your stuff to data planes. Data planes. All good? Sorry for the interruption. So if you look at this at a very high level, as you can see, is that my fault? All good? Okay, thank you. I like it. Okay, help me refocus. So these platforms basically helps developers to bring code to production, right? This is where your code runs. Your data planes are like where the workloads, where your code runs. It could be multiple clusters. It could be running your local data center. It could be running Kubernetes in Azure, Microsoft, Google, any other platform, right? So in these architectures, in these platforms, you have a component called control plane. The primary objective of the control plane is basically to orchestrate everything. How do I get code into production? When you deploy, let's say, code in Kubernetes, you need certain manifests. Like, let's say, how do I generate infrastructure manifest so that code can be deployed into Kubernetes? We'll talk a bit more about this later. All right. Now, let's say you're part of an organization and you want to build this kind of platform. In this organization, two target audiences, platform engineers and developers. So don't worry about the letters. It's generated. I think that's obvious. So they're having a discussion, and they're saying we need to build an internal development platform. It's cool. It's a hot topic. So how do we do that? The platform engineers are the team who are responsible in a company. Like, right? If you search about platform engineers and what they do, you will really understand. So they have two choices. Typically, in any software, you have a choice of build versus buy. This is very common, right? We can build it from the scratch. If you look at that complicated diagram, you can see it's sometimes, if you have the capacity, strength, team, expertise, resources, you can build it for sure. But there are certain organizations, they can just buy it. There are SaaS offerings that you can register, pay a monthly fee, and you get a tenant. You get your own isolated setup. So those are the two options that we usually see. So if you're in a hurry, if you're a small organization, buy makes perfect sense, right? Right. So those are the two options. But let's talk about Open Choreo. Like, how do we fit Open Choreo into this decision-making system? Open Choreo is not really build or not really buy. So the purpose is to build sort of an open source complete solution. So you can just download and run it, and you have an internal developer platform from day one. It works by default. It has all the components there, right? So if you are in that mood, you can do that. But the true fact is, certain organizations, they have existing integrations already. They have their CI system. They have certain GitOps practices. They are not using maybe GitHub. They may be using GitLab, Bitbucket. So it is possible for you to integrate your existing systems with Open Choreo as well. If you are just starting out, you can just download and use it. But if you're an existing company, you can integrate your systems. So this is completely written in Go. Any Go fans? No? That's fine. This is Kubernetes native and GitOps friendly. What do I mean by Kubernetes native is it is designed to run in Kubernetes. It natively understands Kubernetes, right? So this is the URL, very easy to remember, openchoreo/Open Choreo. Just visit it and see. Okay, so let's talk a bit about Open Choreo. So the diagram I showed earlier is the Open Choreo architecture, right? So if I use my pointer, I think that would be easier. At the bottom, there are 4 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are like each layer, and in each layer, you could see certain logos and certain text, right? So the bottom layer is infra layer. The second is observability. I'll get to that. The third one is sort of runtime. The top is design time, this writing code, working on at that layer, right? So the infrastructure talks about where your workloads run, Kubernetes in various platforms, and then not just Kubernetes, it requires certain other open source projects to ensure observability, security, and things like that. We'll talk about this a little bit later. Then the observability stack is when you run your systems, you need to observe. You need logs, you need metrics, you need traces. So these parts are also built into Open Choreo. So from day one, when you install and run it, you get that capabilities out of the box. So you don't need to do it by yourself. But obviously, you can integrate your systems as well. Yeah, the runtime layer is where, so I'm going to talk about certain abstractions, developer abstractions. The runtime layer is where those abstractions get mapped to, let's say, how they get mapped to at runtime, and whether those abstractions are enforced at runtime. There are certain things. We don't want to go through all of them right now. At the design time is basically what developers do. They think in terms of abstractions that I'm going to talk next, and then they commit code, they use the platform, they use the portal to see what's out there. We'll talk about that. I'm going to do a demo as well. So right after the demo, I'm going to come back to this image, and it'll be much more clearer after that. Let's see whether it'll happen. Okay, so even though these systems are a little bit complicated, there are certain abstractions that they offer. For platform engineers, they think in terms of these abstractions. I'm going to spend a bit more time on this. Yeah, so this is for a particular organization, right? And these organizations, they have projects, software projects. Think of them as applications, right? And these applications can contain multiple components, web app, backend, things like that. And these applications, they can be in certain environments at a given time. Could be like a dev environment, staging, production, right? And there's a pipeline usually associated with that. These pipelines can be automated or manual. So you need certain permissions for you to push your stuff from dev to staging, right? And that's what the pipeline defines. Pipelines also certain rules that you can write down, right? And then your projects and your environments can run in different clusters. So typically you have your production systems running in an isolated cluster, and your non-prod environments like dev staging run in a different cluster. This is typically how an organization works, right? So this image gives you certain abstractions that you can configure OpenCoreo, or in that matter, any internal developed platform. You have data planes, environments, pipelines, and projects, right? So that's for typically platform engineers use these abstractions. Now let's look at what developers should use, or we encourage them to use. In OpenCoreo, when you start developing software, this is very common. I mean, this is how you even begin to write code, right? You have a certain project, and you organize a team around that, and the team develop multiple components, right? This is like typical application, not like writing a programming language, writing a library. These are typical applications, right? So you have a web app component, you have a service component, you could have a task that runs a U-trigger task, or that runs on a given schedule, right? Yeah, and then components have a name and a type. And if you look at these components, there are other properties. They have endpoints. What do we mean by endpoints? Endpoints are the network entry points exposed by like ports. What ports they open, because infrastructure needs to know to open that port so that outside people can talk, right? So, and connections. Connections are dependencies to other components. This component depends on component C2. This component depends on C3, things like that, right? It could be dependencies to other cloud services, like S3 buckets, things like databases. So as a developer, using these abstractions, I can declaratively talk about endpoints and connections, let's say in a YAML file, right? I'm going to show that YAML file in a second. And then that's it. They write the code, they write the YAML file, and OpenCoreo takes care of everything else and generate all required stuff, right? So these are the development time abstractions. Now, if you map these abstractions to runtime, then this is what you get. So at runtime, this boundary, like the cell, is your project. And what's inside are components. These components are interacting, not sure whether you can see lines. These are your connections, right? Dependencies. And this can be an endpoint. The C2 exposes an endpoint, and C1 uses that. So when you define development time abstractions, at runtime, this is how it's visualized. This is how it's enforced in Open Choreo. So these components are encapsulated in a project. We can talk a little bit more about this later. I'll go fast. I think I got the 10 minutes notification. So this slide, quickly I'll go through how we map these abstractions into Kubernetes, right? So this is the control plane I was talking about, right? Control plane has an abstraction called data plane. This is the data plane, is where your stuff runs, right? Control plane basically takes your abstractions and convert and deploy them into the data plane, right? So we have environment, dev, staging, and production. Then you have a project. As soon as you have a project, then you have namespaces in Kubernetes. If you are familiar with Kubernetes, anyone familiar with Kubernetes? Good. So yeah, Kubernetes has namespaces. Each project plus environment in Open Choreo becomes a namespace. That kind of makes sense. We have project plus dev, project plus staging, prod. Right? When you deploy a component now, that component basically becomes a deployment in Kubernetes. Right? It could be deployment, any other workload resource, another component like that. So this is how Open Choreo maps everything, right? I think I'll do a quick demo. So in this demo, I have two Kubernetes clusters running. One is the control plane. Not sure, I think the font size should be okay, right? Yeah. Yeah. One is control plane, the second one is data plane. Control plane is like another cluster where all control plane components are running. This is like Kubernetes operator that we have written. In the data plane is where actual stuff runs, right? So there's Choreo, Open Choreo system namespace, where all the system components runs, right? So I have two clusters, and we also have Kubernetes, CLI designed. CLI is good enough. It's friendly, and you can create components, you can deploy, you can build, you can do anything. But for the demo, I'm not going to use the CLI. I'll use a UI. So in these internal developed platforms, there are a lot of new techs are coming up. Have you heard about Backstage before? No? Backstage? Yeah, Backstage is like a React for internal developed platform portals. Like if you want to write a UI, like some UI app, you would write React and other frameworks, right? That's for generic UIs. But Backstage is like a UI framework for internal developer portals. Right? It has specific abstractions that it's easy for you to write plugins. So what we have done in Backstage is we have written Open Choreo plugin for Backstage, right? And these are the components that I have run. If you look at the systems is in Backstage, systems map to a project in Open Choreo. Project has a bunch of components, right? So if I open an internal apps component, it will show what are the components. It has these components. This is like an internal apps project of an organization. And then you could see claims app, leave request app. So this is the backend service of claim service, claim web app, leave request app, and app backend. Very, very, very simple 4 components, right? Now when you visualize the project and when you see the architecture of that, you tend to see the same image that I showed earlier, the runtime abstractions. I'll get to the code soon, but I just want to show you like how we render the abstractions at runtime. So these are generated actually probing the running code, the running system, right? So if I expand a little bit, as you can see, this is a gateway which shows public gateway. It says the claim web apps and the leave request app and the app backend is, sorry, these two are exposed to public, and anyone can access it. This is another gateway. We usually call it internal gateway, which means it is this service is exposed in the organization. So any other projects can access it. So that's what it says. So if I go to this claim service repo, so I have created, not sure whether you can see it, I have created a GitHub org for the demo and deployed a bunch of components. I'll take you to the claim service quickly. Yeah. So this is some Go code, very, right? And if you open this YAML file I was talking about, this is where, as a developer, I describe my component. And here I have said it is, this component exposes a REST API. This is the schema, this is the base path, and this is the visibility. I don't want it to be public, but I want it to be organization level. So that's why when you go here, you see the claim service is not exposed via the public gateway, but I can, let's see whether this works. I tried it last night. So let's see, let me reduce. So I'm going to edit. I'm going to make it true. Maybe I don't want to expose to organization. Right, I'm going to commit. And what happens is when you commit, if I go to that component, this is the component, right? If I go to claim service component and go to the component view and use the builds, I should be able to see a new build is running, which is triggered. I think this is the one that is running now, right? So this is basically integrated to GitHub Actions, right? So GitHub Action runs, and when it's done, it should be deployed. Right now, it is deployed to dev environment, right? So let's wait until the deployment is updated. So it is just 5:12 last night. So I wasn't joking. So this was last night, I deployed it. Now let's see when the build passes. Let's look at the action. Yeah, I think build is okay, 42 seconds. When I refresh, I should be able to, yeah, it's deployed now, right? And when I go to the project to see whether the diagram is updated, I can go to the system, internal apps, architecture. So now, as you can see, there's no organizational, it's not exposed to organization, but it is exposed to public, right? So that's just some features of Open Choreo. And one more thing, these are the builds, but when you go to deployments, it is in the deployment stage, right? I can promote to stage. These are manual, like I can do it. Maybe I have the permissions. I'll do it. You get a these are under development, so that's why you see fancy pop-ups. But when you refresh, you should be able to see that it's now running in the staging environment. And you have, if you look at the URL, we have, this is dev, you get a dev URL, this is the staging URL, right? So you can, if you want, you can use to, you can push to production as well, and that's it. If you are a DevOps kind of person, we have a DevOps tag. You can directly visualize your clusters, what's running your cluster. This is what's running on control plane. We have a bunch of Kubernetes CRs that are generated, but if you look at data plane now, there are 3 pods, one for each environment. And you could see deployment for dev, deployment for blah, 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 and then even services, right? So I think running out of time, but that's kind of the talk. So again, 1 minute, sorry, yeah, thank you, just a minute. And these are the open source projects. We are using a lot of CNCF and Apache Foundation. I think it's nicely related to the previous talk. So a lot of open source projects. And because of that, that's why we are also planning to donate this project to CNCF Foundation. Not yet initiated, but that's a plan. Yeah, I think yeah. Welcome to join Open Choreo community. Very active project, as in not yet production ready, but we are planning to make it production ready by Q2 in a couple of months, right? So we'll see you there. Thank you.